little clip of John Lennon's Imagine, right? And it becomes clear from this Imagine, right, that what he's talking about, or she's talking about in this Imagine thing, is the Masonic utopia type of idea, right? Where it's like this, you know, they've got all the naturals out the way, and it's all peace, love, brotherhood, and all this, right? And they've sort of, you know, they've stopped the heaven and hell hex and all that, this, you know, because there's no need for it anymore. And, you know, they've got the dirty naturals out the way, who they despise and all that. See what I mean? And it's like, you know, it's supposedly restoration to the sort of Garden of Eden and all this type of idea, right? Of course, you know, we know all the codes in this stuff anyway, like the Garden of Eden is a need. You know what I mean? The garden, those who are needed by the royal court or whatever. You know, those who are needed are in the garden and all that, and those who are, you know, there's all type of different codes in it, right? But yeah, they say it made us think, right, this utopia idea, right, made us think like the Imagine. You've got the sort of jam idea in the Imagine, right? The game and the jam type of thing, right? And like the gyms and all that. And it made us think of that saying, right, which is jam tomorrow, right? Which I think dates back to Winnie the Pooh or something, you know, some old 1800s children's book, something, right? And it's jam tomorrow, and it means basically it's like the promise of something, where something is promised, like, but never materializes, because, you know, as we know, tomorrow never comes and all that. You know what I mean? It's all like about the present day. And of course, you know, the idea of jam tomorrow is the idea, you know, of jam tomorrow, and of course tomorrow never comes. It's like the promise is never fulfilled and all that, right? So this is like what they use in the Masonic tea program. The sort of royal court uses this in its Masonic tea program against its own teas in its own program, right? Because obviously you know, when they sort of snare these people in their tea program, or sort of get them in their tea program, right, it's always based on the sort of promise of something, right? So maybe, you know, say for example, you take an immigrant or something, right? The immigrant's got nothing, right? They'll arrive on sort of, you know, shores, foreign shores and that, with, you know, note, a few rags or whatever, right? So you can basically co-opt them into the tea program of service to the royal court, right? Via, you know, the promise of a tin of baked beans or something, right? A little bit of food or something, you know, it's that simple, isn't it? And you can get them to work for you and all that, and you co-opt them into this sort of tea program, right? Yeah. And this sort of makes us think, right, that in about 2 or 3 generations, right, you can basically make the initial promise, right, that's given, right, basically disappear, right? So sort of you take one of these type of people, right, that's it, an example of an immigrant, right? You take an immigrant, right? It make them serve the royal house, right, for like 2 generations, right? Then by the time this next generation's born, the initial promise of what was sort of promised to the initial immigrant, right, is totally forgotten. So it's not remembered, right? So basically, then they can take that sort of line of people, right, that sort of bloodline, and you know, dispose of it by sort of cutting it loose from the tea program, right? Sort of restoring it back to natural people type of thing, right? Where it's been in service to the royal house for, like, you know, a couple of generations. See what I'm saying? And that's basically seems to be a way in which they've done a lot of you know, in which they've used that method quite a lot, right? Obviously over the, you know, a couple of 100 years or whatever, right? They seem to use that method, because in this method you can basically have a servant, right, a servant bloodline, right, for, you know, 50, 60 years or whatever, and then basically cut it loose without having to sort of pay up on the initial promise that was sort of, you know, the contract or the obligation or whatever. You see what I mean? So it's like a very handy way of getting out of the obligation. See what I'm saying? So cut them loose from the tea program after, you know, 2 or more generations of service. See what I'm saying? And that seems to be like what they use as a method, right? So the initial promise is totally forgotten about, right? And that seems to be the idea, the same idea what's behind the Masonic utopia idea, right? Because it's like, obviously, that they're sort of, you know, you get a lot of these Masons who are in this program, and they sort of, they really believe in this idea. It's gonna be great, it's going to be peace and love and brotherhood and all this. But if you examine the realities of the society and the world and that, it seems to be getting worse and worse all the time. It seems to be, what I mean? The standard of life seems to be getting worse and worse, right? And, all the time. So it's like, that's obviously at odds with the utopian idea, right? So we can see that the utopia idea that they're promising their own teas is basically like the jam tomorrow thing and all that. See, it isn't going to materialise. It's never going to come about, see? So that what these people are doing, the royal houses and that, see, is just basically using people and all that, manipulating people, even their own teas in the program, see? Because they can keep them in that tea program for a couple of generations. Use them up and use their services, make them servants and that, right, in whatever capacity, and then basically cut them loose, right? And there you go. They don't have to pay up on what was promised to, you know what I mean? Whether it be, they could, like I said, they could snare in a sort of entire bloodline of servants for as little as a sort of plate of chips, and you know what I mean? It's simple as that, like, isn't it? And they have loyal servants for 50, 60 years on the basis of half of a loaf of bread or something. You see what I mean? That's the way they do it. That's the way they've always done it. That's why you've got the type of system what we've got. Because how else could it sort of stand? See what I mean? It has to be something like that, where you've got that type of very duplicitous and very obviously weird as with a tea program being in place. See what I mean? But that seems to be how they've done it. You know what I mean? It's always the promise of the jam tomorrow. Tomorrow's gonna be great, the utopia. Peace, love and all this. We're gonna do this and that. And of course, they're never gonna sort of relinquish any control or hand anything back to anybody other. You know what I mean? Once they've got things to the, to where they've got more and more this type of social control type of thing put in, they're never ever gonna hand anything back to anybody, even their own dirty tea, who are sort of, going along with it and serving them and all that. See what I mean? It's just not going to happen, is it? You know what I mean? The sort of royal houses are going to get stronger and stronger, they're more wealthy and all that, and have better standard of living. And the sort of, the normal people, even the teas, are going to be, packed in to sort of urban complexes and all that, where it's like the standard life's going to be, bloody horrible, like, as far as I'm concerned. See what I mean? So it's like, as we can see, they use the jam tomorrow type of idea, see, against their own dirty tea, even in their own program. So the sort of the backstabbingness, the Judas type of idea, see, that seems to bear out the Judas idea and all that.